Hey guys, Darren Asbury here with Revital Outdoors. Thank you for tuning in to another exciting podcast tonight. Tonight we have Mr. Freddy Palmer from the great state of Tennessee. Freddie is a longtime angler with Major League Fishing. He's competed in the BFL and Toyota Series events for the past decade. He's won a little more than $30,000 in career earnings, and he's qualified for multiple championship events, including the 2018 BFL All-American. Last year in 2021, Freddie was the overall winner of the Lake Guntersville event in the Choo division of the BFL series. And then this year he gets the opportunity to defend his title because, again, the Choo division will be starting out on Lake Guntersville in the next few weeks. So we're going to talk to Freddie tonight about the different baits and techniques that he used last year to win his tournament, and then how he feels like he can defend his title this year, and then what to expect in the event on Lake Guntersville this year. So we're very excited to have him. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This will notify you when all of our awesome content is hitting our channel, including podcasts, interviews with our pro staff, hunting and fishing videos, and all the different content that we're creating throughout the year. So be sure to go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Also, if you haven't found us already on our social media platforms, check out Revital Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. And if you've never heard of Revital Outdoors before, we're a premium CBD company that offers premium CBD products to outdoor enthusiasts like ourselves. So if you're an avid hunter or fisherman and you experience the inflammation or aches and sorenesses of being out in the field or on the water, or you have trouble sleeping at night, or you have some anxiety getting ready for a big tournament or the day before opening day on the hunting season, check out our full line of CBD products on our website, revitaloutdoors.com. Again, all of our products are THC-free. We're a worker-friendly brand, and they're made right here in the United States. So be sure to check out our website. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him in, Mr. Freddie Palmer. How you doing this evening, buddy?
How you doing? I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. Thanks for taking the time to be on with us in Revital Outdoors. So, man, you walked away with it last year. You're kind of defending your title this year, and the next couple of weeks we have the Guntersville BFL coming up again with the Choo division. You're defending your title. But before we get too far into that, walk us through last year. I think, was that the first time you've ever won on Guntersville? How well do you know Guntersville? Did you practice?
I live approximately an hour and a half away from Guntersville. Okay. And I've been fishing the BFLs for probably 12, 13 years. Mm-hmm. I never had won one. I'd had many top 5, top 10 finishes, but I'd never won one until last year. And to be honest with you, the weight I had, I didn't think I was going to win it then. I'd had no clue I would win it. It's just that the conditions last year got really tough day before the tournament started, and most of the stuff everyone found had kind of dissipated with the cold front. And I was lucky enough to find a wintering area where bass just kind of winter down when they're not real active.
Okay. So they weren't really in that pre-spawn stage. They were in more of their winter pattern still where you were fishing.
Yeah, we had a lot of cold weather, and I'm here now in Tennessee. I'm an hour and a half from Guntersville, and we've had a lot of snow, a lot of freezing sleet, rain, and it's filling up our rivers here, and that cold water is flowing down the Tennessee River, so it's cooling the Tennessee River down. We're actually in a stage right now where the river's actually getting colder, not warming up. We've had a warm December, but ever since January started, it's just gotten colder and colder. So the water's getting colder. The fish's metabolism will slow down.
Right. Sounds like you're pretty dialed into Lake Guntersville. Well, that's really interesting. So do you think, with that being said, you bring up a good point. Do you think anglers that are, looking for those staging fish up in the backs of creeks, near spawning pockets, notorious areas on Lake Guntersville that are known for big spawning flats and all that, do you think they're hurting themselves by trying to relate to those areas this year because of that cooler water coming in?
The fish were, in December, the fish were like really fat and full of eggs, and it was a real warm December. So it was almost like they was wanting to go on bed like they do in Florida in January. But
Mm-hmm.
then all this cold weather come in. We still have snow on the ground where we just had a few inches of snow. It's all been melting the last couple of days, but we got another cold front coming in, and we're expecting more snow. Um,
Wow.
and we don't usually see a lot of snow in this area, maybe once every 3 or 4 years. But this year we're getting snow, freezing sleet, ice, and I'm suspecting the water temperature by the time this tournament rolls around, based on the current weather pattern, we're getting cold front after cold front. It's actually on the cool down, probably going to be in the low to mid 40s by the time the tournament starts. And once the water hits about 50, that's when the fish really start to kind of seek out the flats, 50, 52. Um, so I would tell anyone if they get there, pay close attention to the water temperature this time of year. If it's below 50, you can still catch them down to about 47 degrees on those flats. But once it gets below that, they're kind of in a winter pattern. They're going to search out their deeper haunts.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, they still will be in the grass, but rather than looking at 5 foot or less grass, you got to look more in that 7 to 10 foot grass. When
Okay.
they go, the fish in the grass in the wintertime on Guntersville, they just move out to the deeper grass, which is in Guntersville, that's about 7 to 10 foot. Whereas, say when the water warms up to like 50, 52, they'll be up in that 3 foot of grass on those
Mm-hmm.
flats. So
Right.
it really depends on water temperature. You really got to pay a close attention to it this time of year.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, well, you bring up a lot of interesting points there. So, we've talked a lot to anglers right now. Beginning of the year, we've talked a lot about late winter pre-spawn patterns. You're really the first angler we've talked to really hone in on that winter pattern. How does that change up your approach? Do you slow down? Do you throw smaller baits, bigger baits? Do you have a lot of spots that holding fish, and you rotate through those throughout the day, or do you kind of hold in one area that is holding bigger fish, better quantity? Like, what's your kind of thoughts there?
Um, all the years I fished it, I'm just like every other angler. I go out and I practice, and I try to see what the fish are telling me they want. But everyone on Guntersville knows. I mean, that's where the Alabama rig was first, you know,
Yep.
came out. But I
Right.
think it was Paul Elias.
Yeah. Paul
Um,
Elias, 2012. He had
yeah, and
136
ever
pounds, I
since that
believe.
A
And
rig has come out, most everyone knows there's two things everybody knows when the water's cold on Guntersville. It's bridges, number one. Everybody
right.
will have the bridges covered up
Right.
because for some reason fish migrate to those bridges in the wintertime, mostly because the bait's there. And then the A rig. That's the number one bait when the water's really cold below 50 for a lot of anglers. I'm not a big A rig guy. I don't really like throwing it, but I have to say, three of my fish I caught last year came on it, and then the other two came on a big swim bait.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it was like a 5.5 inch. That's big for here. Um, I don't really mind telling people what I caught my fish on last year because Guntersville's different every year. You could
It is.
show up and try to do what you did last year, and it may not work. I will tell you this: if the water clarity and water temperature is the two biggest things to probably pay attention to. If the water is low and clear and cold, a jerk bait's going to play a major role. But if the water's dirty, stained, and cold, those are actually more jig A rig bites. Something that you can get down in Guntersville. That 8 to 12 foot depth is kind of the depth you got to look. For wintering places. Um,
Hmm.
so if you're fishing a flat that's only 4 foot deep on top, if it's got grass, it'll still hold fish. But I think the big ones, they're looking in that, no shallower than 7 foot range, and the baits vary. I mean, I've caught them everything from a silver buddy to a jig. It's just you got to think deeper when the water's colder. Um, and then if the water's clear, the jerkbait will play a role. There's no doubt.
Right.
I mean, everybody's seen Hank Cherry win it, off the rip rap. Then when he won the classic.
Right.
So the
Right.
bridges, a rig, the clarity of the water and the temperature of the water are the main things to pay attention to. But yes, you can catch them on Guntersville on a lipless. I've caught them probably as cold as 45-degree water, and they've been shallow. And when I say shallow, they're in 3 to 5 foot of water.
Really.
But when the water gets like 52 or above, they're liable to be in a foot of water on Guntersville. It don't take much water to hold them when the water warms up. You just got to think, okay, if they're not shallower, and I'm fishing a lipless and grass, I need to back out with a little heavier lipless, maybe a 3/4 ounce, and fish that 7 to 9, 7 to 10 foot range, because you'll find them somewhere. It's just all about water temperature and water color is the main things you got to pay attention to.
Correct. Correct. So yeah, that jerkbait, you're speaking my language with that jerkbait. I definitely love throwing it. Loved watching Hank Cherry last year win his second classic on Lake Guntersville. That was a 2020 classic. He dropped 29 pounds, 11 ounces the first day. Unbelievable bag. A lot of people don't think about it, but those big fish, especially on Guntersville, even down here in Florida, they'll eat a 4.5 inch suspended jerkbait on that 12-pound line. I mean, don't be afraid of it. I mean, I think there was a lot to learn from Hank Cherry and I'm sure you're an angler as well that's like this. They set their drag a lot looser because they're using smaller diameter line. And one thing I noticed about watching Hank last year is he never horsed a fish. He just fought it, went around the boat as many times as he needed to. You never saw him cranking down on that fish. He just was real steady. I think he engaged his reel from time to time and just left his thumb on that bail. If they needed to take line, he did. I mean, he was catching such big fish, and you can do that on those 4.5, 5 inch jerk baits with 12-pound line.
Yeah. The thing about Guntersville that's different from most lakes that I've been on is they're hard to find, just like any lake. You have to search and search and search. But if you can find a good area where you catch 2 quality fish out of, if you'll just hunker down, in that area, there's more fish there.
You think
You
that's because
just
of the
can't leave
grass
that
or just
area.
Guntersville? Okay.
Yeah,
You think that's because of the grass or just it's Guntersville?
yeah, mostly the grass. The biggest bag I've ever caught on Guntersville was a practice day, and I couldn't believe it. But I caught 7 fish over 5 pounds and never moved my boat. And that was a lipless. The
Right.
biggest one was 7.5 pounds. But that day, I had a heck of a stringer, and that naturally it was a week before a tournament showed up, and the conditions changed, and all that got washed out. But they all just kind of gather up in one area, and that's the number one thing that I've seen about Guntersville that's a little different from a lot of lakes I fished is if you can find an area you can win a tournament in one spot. And
Right.
basically, that's what I did last year when I lucked up and won. All my fish, 12 keepers, come off of an area 10 yards long.
Really?
Yeah.
They were all right there.
But I caught 12 keepers, but they were on 2 baits. The A rig, it produced 10 keepers. And then I left the area. And then I came back and I was trying to help my co-angler. And I said, look, you need keepers. You throw the A-rig. I'm going to throw a big fish bait. So I tied on a big swim bait. And
Right.
I caught a 4 1/4 and a 4-pounder and cold out a couple 3-pounders, with the big swim bait. Not really ever knowing, not even practicing it there. Just kind of saying, I need a big bite. This is a big fish bait. I'm just going to try it. Not
Right.
really knowing if I get a bite or not.
Yeah, it just made sense to you. That A rig bite, it's a lot of fun, but I've been exposed to catching better quality, not necessarily big fish like 4.5, 5 pounds like maybe you have on Guntersville, but I've been exposed to catching better quality on that swim bait. There's no better bite in this world. I mean, I don't care who you are. That swim bait bite is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, the way I'm not too humble to admit that the way that I kind of figured out the A rig was I took a guy practicing with me, and I'm throwing a jerk bait. I said, it was a place that I caught him on a jerkbait in the past, and I told him, I said, let's ride over here and see if they're in this place I want to throw a jerkbait on. And I'm going in there and I'm catching small fish, keepers, nothing over like 2.25. And he's throwing an A-rig behind me, and he catches a 5. And I was like, oh, well, we need to get out of here. So I moved like maybe 50 yards to another little area, and I'm throwing a jerkbait and I'm catching little fish. And then he's still throwing the A-rig, and he catches one about 6. And I was like, oh, I see what the big ones want. They don't want this
Yeah.
jerkbait, because he's fishing behind me. So on tournament day, I go in there throwing the jerkbait and couldn't even get a bite. So I said, okay, I'm going to move 50 yards where we did, and he caught a good one. And I picked up the A-rig, and I caught like 10 keepers in that area.
Really?
But then, like I say, I left that area playing around, catching a fish or two here or there that didn't help me, came back to it, and threw the big swim bait and caught 2 big ones.
Okay. Okay. So, really good insight from the past. How do you suspect this year's BFL? You think it'll be the same conditions, play out the same? I know you haven't really necessarily been there. You guys are scheduled to get some weather this next week, but how do you think this year's tournament will play out?
It's all on Guntersville. You can find them on a spot in the grass one year and go back for 5 years and never find a fish in that same area. If it's a
Right.
grass bite, no matter what the depth is, because the grass is constantly changing. And that's the key. You got to figure out what kind of grass are they using. Are they using deeper eelgrass patches? Or are they using, the hydrilla? And it, like I said before, you kind of got to go by. You got to let the water temperature when the tournament starts. Right now we're cold front after cold front, snow, sleet, rain. If it continues right up to the tournament, doing something like that, I suspect the shallow bite, will I'd say 20% of the people will catch them shallow. The rest of them will all be catching them in that 7 to 10 foot of water. If we get a cold or warmer week and the water temperature warms up, close to 50, then the shallow water bite in the grass, less than 7 foot will probably play a bigger role than what I suspect will be about 20%. It'll go up to 50% shallow bite, 50% deeper bite. There are wintering holes on Guntersville down mid lake to lower end where people catch them 15 to 20 in the winter. They get out there in about 18 foot of water and they gather up, waiting to move up, waiting on the weather to warm up. Those places, they're pretty popular. So a lot of people, when they find one, you'll go there and there'll be 5 boats on tournament day, all fishing the same little area. This year, right now, with the way the cold weather's coming in, I'm going to say it's going to be more of you got to find a deeper bite right now is what I suspect. But it really, if we have, 4 or 5 good days of warm weather and the water temperature gets up around, 50, then that's all going to change. But I would go into it looking at water clarity. If we got some clear water, yeah, jerkbait's going to play a major role. But
Right.
if that water's stained, that jerkbait bite's not going to be as good. So I'm thinking, honestly, most people that win early in the year like this, they either win on a lipless or an A-rig. That's the 2 primary baits, early pre-spawn, because the lipless bites are action bite in the grass. You're ripping it out of the grass. The A-rig bite's just a cold water bite. Anytime the water's below 60, the A-rig just seems to shine.
It does. It does.
I'm not a big A-rig guy, but last year I had to go to it because I seen what it was catching, and I
Yeah.
lucked up and caught enough weight to win.
Right, right. So, funny story. I actually moved from Oklahoma to Florida in 2017, and I went to, I grew up in Oklahoma, went to school in Arkansas. I was in college when the A-Rig came out. That's when Paul Elias won that tournament on Guntersville. unbelievable weights. Everybody in the top 10 was throwing it. You saw Casey Martin. He won the co-angler side of that FLW Open. He dropped 28 pounds the first day. And so being in Arkansas, deep, clear water, obviously it really took off very, very quickly. Randy Haynes, I think, was probably the guy. I have to give him the credit. I think he instituted the first real movement of the A-rig. So I started collecting and started using them. It was one of those baits that at the time, if you weren't using it, you were getting beat by it. But when I moved to Florida, I gave away all my A-rigs, didn't even have anybody pay for them. I gave them to a buddy, and it was like a really happy day for me. But, now it's still an unbelievable bite. I actually still own 2 of them now just because of qualifying for BFL regionals in Georgia and South Carolina. And, but it seems more or less that it just kind of has turned into another bait in the tackle box. And it seems like also the guys that have stuck to the tried and true single big hollow-bodied swim baits, they're starting to catch a little bit more fish and a better quality too.
Yeah. I don't really have a favorite when it comes to swim baits, but the big bait on Guntersville is the Scottsboro tackle swim bait, the hollow belly. It kind of looks like the old osprey.
Yep.
A lot of them they're using them where you twist it. You got the twist in the belly hook with a belly weight. That's right. The what I was using last year whenever I caught the 2 bigger ones when I went back to the area where I had caught some smaller ones earlier.
Right.
The swim bait on the bridges, I think it's Jay Kendrick that made that famous on Guntersville using the Scottsboro tackle swim bait. The bridges, I already had some people tell me, I plan on fishing bridges. One guy just told me last week that lives down there, he said, I went fishing all day and I couldn't hardly get a bite, but I went to a bridge and threw the A-rig and I caught 2 3-pounders. So I'm going to stay on bridges all day. And I said, I've tried that. And, it's really about your boat number when it comes to bridges. If you don't get a good boat number, you probably not going to get to fish the spot where you found them on a bridge.
No, one thing I have kind of noticed just looking back at old photos of Bassmaster Elite events, the Bassmaster Classic in 2014 when Randy Howe won, I think that was really the first significant sign, public sign. It's always been known, but I think that was the first real public sign that the bridges are so key on Guntersville. Not only do you have tournament anglers, but you got locals that'll come in there on you. And those Guntersville locals are not afraid to pick up a rod out of the rod box during a tournament and start swinging.
No, I've had buoys out before and be fishing them for 4 hours and had them come over and throw at your buoy, so they don't care.
Wow.
And then they tell you don't own the lake, and you're like, no, I don't own the lake, but there's something called etiquette.
It happens. We're all out there to have a good time, though. So, I do have to ask one question about your lipless crankbait. If you don't want to offer it up, totally understand. As far as your lipless crankbait goes, are you a lot of rattles or a one knocker kind of guy?
I like a lot of rattles, though. Fashion, a lot of rattles. I like the Excalibur that they don't make anymore. That's the one Booyah bought, so you can get it in the Booyah. To me, it's about one of the best you can buy for the price. Last year I fished the Toyota Series. I think the guy that won it said he caught it on the Azuma Z, lipless. But me, the Booyah or the Excalibur brand, lipless. One of the biggest colors on Guntersville that everybody likes is the Royal Red. Anything with red in it, that just seems to shine. I have noticed the past couple years, if the fish will get, 5 foot or less, if you have the warmer weather where you can catch them, a lot of the big hot bait the last couple years, besides the chatterbait, in the fire crawl, that's a hot bait for the last, maybe 3 or 4 years, but everybody knows about that. But the hottest bait on Guntersville the last 2 years has been the Berkeley Fritz Side 5 biggin. That's been the hottest bait that I've seen come about just within the last couple years. I think there's a guy down there, Mike Carter. He started posting pictures using that bait, and then it caught on, about 2 years ago, and now everybody's throwing the Fritz Side 5, the biggin, The big one is just a 1/4 inch bigger and a little heavier than the regular Frittside 5. They're throwing that in the spring crawl colors of red on top, orange bellies, and they're catching lots of fish in the grass. Where lipless is all we would throw in the grass. That Frittside 5 is a flat-sided crankbait that goes 5 foot or less, 2 to 5 foot range, and you can just pull it out of that grass. And I've seen some videos on YouTube where some guys are just wearing them out on Guntersville in February on that Frittside 5. So that's a hot bait that I plan on trying to throw a little more of this year. Because in some of the YouTube videos I've watched where guys were throwing it, guys in the back were throwing lipless, not catching any. Guy in the front's just wearing them out on the Frittside 5. Then he changes to a Frittside 5 on first cast, catches a fish. And I was like, okay, there's something to it.
Right. We got something dialed in here. That's a phenomenal crankbait. I've heard, I've like you, I've done a little research on YouTube, read a couple articles about it. I first saw it at ICAST, and the one thing I noticed that I think probably attributes to it being just a better grass crankbait is it's got that coffin bill that a lot of anglers are not used to.
Yeah. That bill probably does keep it deflecting off of stuff, and you can just crank it through the grass. I was up at a bass event on Oneida this year, which is totally off the subject, but something that I did up there, and I got a feeling it's because of the type of grass that it had. I had never thrown a jerkbait in grass, like in the grass. The grass is growing up off a 7 foot bottom, and I'm out there, and I couldn't believe how well the jerkbait was coming through the grass. You're a Florida guy. You might already know this. I didn't. And I was like, it was unbelievable how many fish I was catching in the grass that was only 1.5 foot under the surface. And I'm throwing a jerkbait that goes, 5 to 7 foot deep. And I could get it through it most of the time. And I said, man, I got to try that on Guntersville. I haven't tried that yet.
Well, it doesn't work. I don't know. I think it was just a fluke deal you found. I know down here, if anybody is listening to this and you're fixing to fish the BFL on the Harris chain or the Open on Toho, don't even think about a jerkbait. I might have one on my deck, but it's just because I'm trying to find a fish that might just call possum or something like that. But no, in all seriousness, it's an unbelievable bait over that grass. They will flat out eat it. I mean, it's a phenomenal.
I couldn't believe how well it come through it. I'd never, it's got so many hooks. I was just like, well, I can't believe this is coming through the grass as easy as it is. I would have never thrown a jerkbait in the grass.
Right.
Now, I've thrown it on top of it, but this was going down in it, But I think it must have something to do with the type grass. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious to try that on Guntersville this year. I just learned it last August.
You're going to have some fun with that one. That's definitely a good bite. So, well, Freddie, I've been kind of enamored by your right over your left shoulder. It looks like you got your trophy collection. Looking at your record
that in there for a reason.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. You're a very well-known angler in the state of Tennessee. I really didn't understand it until I started to research you a little bit. You've definitely not only fished for over a decade, but you just have a lot of respect in the Tennessee area and Alabama area as far as an angler. You seem very well-rounded. But, to wrap up this podcast, do you have any last final thoughts, any family or friends or sponsors you'd like to thank, any last things from Freddy Palmer before the BFL tournament in a couple of weeks on Lake Guntersville?
Well, I get a little sponsorship deal from Jacobs Marine in Lawrenceburg. And they take care of my motor. They're the number one independent Mercury dealer in the country. They do more change-outs than anybody. And then Mercury, I'd like to thank them for helping me, and also Jacobs Marine and Lawrence. I was on their pro staff. I'd like to thank them. But I'm just like any other fisherman. I go out there and I put my work in, and I do work hard to try to find them. And some days it comes together, and some days it don't. But, I appreciate you for having me on the podcast. Any opportunity I got to help people, I try. Because I'm not unfortunately, I tell people too much. If I win, I'm not one to keep my lips closed. I like to tell them. I like for everyone to catch fish.
That's what it's all
It
about.
does hurt you sometimes, but I just feel like if I'm helping somebody, I've done what I'm here to do. I've helped myself, and they'll return the favor sometime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, well, Freddie, it's been our honor on behalf of Revital Outdoors. Thank you for taking the time to be on our podcast. Good luck this year in the Choo division, and we hope to see you very soon at a tournament.
All right. Thank you. Nice.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
y'all.
Freddie. Well, that's going to wrap up this podcast, again featuring the winner from last year's BFL tournament, the Choo division on Lake Guntersville, Freddy Palmer. Awesome interview. Great guy to meet in the fishing industry. And I think someone like Freddy is just kind of reminds us how fortunate we are to be involved in this fishing industry, the outdoor industry, and all the great people we get to meet. So that's going to wrap up today's podcast. Make sure if you like these podcasts and you want to see more and you want to be notified when we're dropping new podcasts, go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, check out Revital Outdoors on all of our social media platforms. That's going to be Facebook and Instagram. And if you're interested in Revital Outdoors premium CBD products, check out our website, revitaloutdoors.com. We have a full lineup of premium CBD products. These are made in the USA, THC free, and give you all the important elements that outdoor enthusiasts need when it comes to joint and back discomfort relief, inflammation relief, help you sleep better at night, all the different things that attribute to better days out in the field. Again, I'm Theron Asbury on behalf of Revital Outdoors. Be safe out there. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.